This is Citizens Gone Wild with Dr. George Zilbergeld as your host. Um, in a poor mood this morning because I'm reading about Senator Kamala Harris. And the headline in this story, which is done by Zionist Organization of America, is "Fire your Israel-hating COS Karine Jean-Pierre," or better said, ZOA to Senator Kamala Harris. Fire your Israel-hating chief of staff, Karine Jean-Pierre. One thing that bothers me about this is that this person was given to her. She was told, this will be your chief of staff. And that's a bit worrisome because it indicates that the Democratic Party is moving further in opposition to, or at least they're not as friendly with Israel and Jews as they used to be. Pierre is a Israel hater. See that? Even the phone is against me. She repeated a blood libel that Israel may have committed war crimes in its attacks on Gazian protesters. This was when there was a large number of people from Gaza would come up and threaten to break into Israel and obviously kill people and damage property while they were there. And she says that Israel may have committed war crimes. Israel goes to so much trouble to avoid hurting civilians, more than any other nation on earth that I've ever heard of. I mean, when they bombard an area when they're at war, they first try and get the civilians out of there. They actually make an effort, a tremendous effort, to move civilians out. If they think they're going to bombard an area where there's an apartment building, for example, they actually drop a small explosive that doesn't harm anyone, like a large firecracker, on the roof so that the people inside will realize, aha, the Israelis are about to bomb us, let's get the hell out of here. And they do that. I don't know any other country that does this. I don't know whether I should call it stupid or not, but they go to an awful lot of trouble. They also actually know the phone numbers of people in these various buildings in places like Lebanon. They actually call them up and say, get out, we're about to bomb that area. And I'm sure some of the soldiers on the other side get out at the same time. So it's particularly vicious to call them warmongers or to say they committed war crimes. It is just the opposite. They also accused AIPAC, which is a pro-Israel lobbying organization. Jean-Pierre accused AIPAC, the Israeli lobbying organization, of severely racist, homophobic rhetoric. What? Israel, Tel Aviv is considered the most homosexual friendly city in the world. It is rated #1 by various homosexual organizations as being friendly and a great place to party. They have what is either the world's largest or one of the world's largest pro-homosexual marches in Tel Aviv. They accuse them of, well, she's been trafficking in, they have accused Jews of trafficking in anti-Muslim and anti-Arab rhetoric while lifting up Islamophobic voices and attitudes. And what she basically is saying, the Jews are a bunch of bigots. The Jews are probably the least bigoted group on earth at this point. She also attacked AIPAC, the lobbying group, for being in opposition to the Iran deal. The Iran deal is considered catastrophic for Israel since it opens the gates to Iran developing atomic weapons, and they have repeatedly said that they would like to kill all the Jews. Miss Jean-Pierre is advancing the sickening, dangerous Orwellian cancel destruction culture that falsely condemns Israel and any pro-Israel groups. There's no need for her to be the chief of staff of Kamala Harris. I've been having some thoughts about how to fight back against the anti-Israel rhetoric, anti-Jewish rhetoric on college campuses. And I thought that instead of being defensive and saying, no, 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 we're not homophobic. No, no, we're not Islamophobic. In other words, instead of being reactive, what about being proactive? So I came up with this idea, and I'm not sure if it's crazy or not. There are pictures available of the atrocities committed in Muslim countries. One startling picture is that of 4 homosexuals, and I don't know if you can see this, probably not, but 4 homosexuals that are being hung in public, hung from cranes, so that more people can see that. And this is in Iran. And they do this on a regular basis, by the way. And I thought people should know about this. I also thought that this way we shift the argument here, and instead of Israel having to justify itself, well, why not have the Muslim, pro-Muslim, pro or anti-Israel people let you, first of all, you explain why you're hanging people in public from cranes, because they have a different sexual orientation that you don't care for. And I thought these pictures could be made to stand out, maybe by making them oversized or just putting them around campus. And then I thought, well, this should be done during Anti-Apartheid Week, which is a week where they spend the enemies of Jews spend an entire week harassing and causing the utmost pain in Jewish hearts by accusing Jews of being racist or being Nazis. It's just sickening. They spend their time trying to find out what will hurt Jews' feelings more than anything else. And so I thought if you put out pictures like this, they'd have to deal with this instead of having time to talk about Jews. I don't know where I get enough Jews who have the guts to do something like this. And I have a little trouble getting out and doing this. But still, I think it's a worthwhile effort, and I think I can get hold of people. And I'll just mail them these pictures in one of those mailing tubes. Put them around campus. Let the Muslim leftist group deal with it. I was thinking the other day about what changes would come about if Biden became president. First of all, there are some good things I think that would happen, but there are also things I'd worry about. One thing that I think would happen that I would like is that there would be more medical care available for people who don't have proper medical care nowadays. And it would include more areas of medical care: dentistry, eye care, hearing care, and mental health care. After every massacre, people say we need more mental health care available to everyone, that's accessible and friendly, so people who are having strange thoughts can think, maybe I'll go in there and talk to this person and see if we can work things out. Maybe there's some medicine that can help me. It might work, and it's certainly worth a try. It is much better than watching these school massacres continue and continue and continue. So I think we would have more medical care. I expect what he will do is, at least he said what he would do, is expand Obamacare, which is it's a program that has problems. It puts a lot of pressure on small business people. And it also, well, it takes care of the very poor, and of course the rich don't need our help. And it takes care of, and the middle class is taken care of mainly by company medical care programs. This takes care of the people who are not getting proper medical care nowadays. and especially who don't get much in the way of dental care and mental health care. I'd like to see that. And I think Obamacare eh, can be fixed. Just change some things. And I think that would be a good thing. Um, I think there would be a lot of programs that would cost a lot of money. And the people think, or they're told, that, well, we'll just tax the rich. The problem is there are a lot of rich people, and we definitely could raise the taxes on the super rich, and they'd still be eating 3 squares a day. But there are always limits on the amount of money you can tax the very rich. Um, and I think in the end, it'll end up costing the middle class quite a bit of money as well, which might well be worth it. In this country, generally speaking, people pay around 30 to 35% of their overall income in overall taxes, national, state, local. It would probably have to go up to somewhere around 50% of their income. This would be for the very rich. And if you want, you can even raise it up higher for the very rich. I'm not very rich, so I wouldn't care a lot. But if you did this, you could have some marvelous programs in the United States, including proper medical care for every single soul that lives in America, which I am very enthusiastic about. I think some things would change for the worse. There would be less emphasis on liberty and more emphasis on equality. There's always a balancing with those two values. And in the United States, we have so far come out on the side of liberty and less on the side of on equality. I mean, we have both values, of course, but the emphasis would shift, definitely would shift a lot. I think that on college campuses, the unceasing attacks on Western civilization and its values, such as liberty and democracy, would continue. Jews would continue to be degraded and attacked, and very little, probably nothing would be done about it. Maybe once in a year, Biden would come out and say that would be wrong and go back in. I think colleges and universities would continue to sink in the sense that the kids would be less likely to learn fundamental skills such as reading and writing at a high level, and would spend more of their time on propaganda courses that denigrate Western civilization in general, the United States in particular, and a lot of time would be wasted. I think that there would be more rule by a new elite, often called in Europe the new class. That is, intellectuals, people who deal with ideas all day long and read and write a lot and produce more words and little else. And I think they would be more powerful, more powerful, and more powerful. I think the country would become less democratic. I mean, we still have regular elections and all, but more and more of the important decisions will be made by judges and bureaucrats. And, you know, there's very little control over these people. Does anyone out there know the name of a single federal bureaucrat? I don't know any. I don't know one. And there would be more power given to judges because the judges would now be appointed by leftist Democrats. And we would have more problems because of this. The reason we have so much trouble over abortion, and people are still yelling and screaming and fighting and hating over it, is because it was done by judges. In Europe, they also have, you have a right to an abortion. But that law was passed by the legislative branches of the various countries in Europe. And so you can complain, but after all, it's a democracy, and the people of France, Germany, Italy decided on this. In America, we can't say that. It's a judge who decided on this. Not that the judge is a bad person or a good person, but a lot of important decisions should be made by the people. And if you don't, you'll have endless chaos and trouble, just as we have in this country. And we have an unending fight about abortion. Um, I think that would be one other thing that would happen, and this would be tricky. This ought to be a point at which Biden can be attacked, but so far I haven't seen anything about that. China, relations with China. Biden never said a cross word about China in all the time that he's been in office. He might now say something, but it won't be very powerful and meaningful. China's been beating our brains out economically. They basically by themselves destroyed the middle third of the country. It's coming back now, but it's been a long time coming. And Biden, as far as I know, never said a word. I don't think he ever will. I think if he opens his mouth, the Chinese will beat him up pretty bad, because he went over there with his son Hunter, and well, I feel sorry for people who have children like that. He's on drugs. He's in there to do well. He's messed up in so many ways. You need a legal pad to write down all the ways he's messed up. But anyway, he went over there with him, and the some Chinese rich people, bankers, decided to give Hunter Biden's investment fund, I think it's $1 billion. Now, why would they do that? I mean, did they sit around at their board meeting and say, you know what we're missing on our team? A drug ad. I don't think they said anything like that, and neither do you. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't worry a little bit about that. And I don't think that he has the type of guts that Trump has when he gets adamant about something. You remember for a long time, people were beating up Trump pretty bad because he was putting the pressure on China, and China was then refusing to buy certain of our goods and services, such as soybeans. And people were yelling, they were screaming, they're carrying on, and Trump just got in one of his stubborn moods and said, no, we're not giving in till they give in. And they have given in, and now I assume we'll get back on a more even keel with China. But I just don't see Biden digging in there. If he does, they're going to bring up something about his son Hunter, and I don't think he wants that. I came across this little item. I've been looking a lot at the massacres, the brutal killings of Christians throughout the Middle East and especially in Africa. And here's something. In 2011, there was a particular massacre of Christians called the Maspero massacre. The Egyptian government basically slaughtered the Christians who were protesting the burning and closing of their churches. Obama said that he called for restraint on all sides. He refused to take a side here. He called for restraint on all sides. I wonder if he'd been president during Pearl Harbor, if he would have called for restraint from all sides. The leftist point of view is so prominent, so permanent a part of our atmosphere that we often miss it. It just comes at us from so many little sides and so many little pinpricks, the leftist point of view, which again is basically hostile to Western civilization and in the elements of Western civilization, such as the United States and Israel. There's a book that just came out by Ilhan Omar. She's the congresswoman from Minnesota. And basically praised this book. They call her a scrappy fighter. Very nice. She backs the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which their goal is the complete and absolute destruction of Israel. She has a lot of trouble with Jews in Israel. She says that when she ran for office, she said her opponent was in the pocket of Wall Street, and she mentioned 3 Jewish donors by name. She has said that Jews in America have dual loyalty. That is, their loyalty is not to the United States. They're disloyal. They're traitors. That's what she says about Jews. A little disguise is still there. And when asked why so many Congress people vote to support Israel, she said, it's all about the Benjamins, baby. Benjamins being, I think, $100 bills. I haven't seen too many of them, so I'm not sure. But basically what she was saying was, with the Jews, it's just about money. That's the only thing Jews care about. That's what she said. Yet none of this was brought up in this book review. There was an interesting article in a site called Minding the Campus, and they said, what will your children learn at university? And basically, they'll learn, first of all, that the campus is no longer a marketplace for ideas. The right ideas have already been decided upon by the leftist professors and by cowardly administrators who don't want to go up against the leftist professors. And you learn that all cultures are the same. That's what multiculturalism means. There are no superior cultures. Now, before this, we thought there damn well is a superior culture. Western culture is the best culture. Why? Because it champions ideas like liberty, like democracy, like due process, like trial by jury, like freedom of religion, and on and on and on. But now the idea is that all cultures are equal. That's what multiculturalism means. And the Western culture is certainly not better. In fact, the Western culture, according to the people who dominate our college campuses, may be a lot worse than other cultures. And they learned that we have spent most of our times either killing Indians or oppressing other people in foreign lands. And you might even get the idea that only America imported slaves. We're a very, very small portion. I mean, any enslavement is a god-awful thing. But America imported perhaps 400,000 slaves, perhaps a few less, a few more. That's a small number of the 15 million that were taken from Africa. And any instance of slavery is a horror show, is pure evil. But we were not as greatly involved as other nations. But according to the teaching on college campuses, we are uniquely responsible for slavery. Actually, what we are uniquely responsible for is the elimination of slavery. Most people don't even realize, and they're certainly not being taught nowadays, K through 12 or college, that after the Civil War, the United States, together with England, went around the world basically eliminating slavery. Well, they also preach that this history is a story of oppressor and oppressed. Those are the only two categories available according to the left, to the Marxists, the people who dominate college campuses nowadays. And there's no room for anything else. You're an oppressor or you're oppressed. That's it. And this comes straight out of Karl Marx, who said the world has always been like this. Either you're an oppressor or you're oppressed. You're either a slave owner or you're a slave. You're either a rich businessman or you're poverty stricken, and on through history. And then if you want to be a good person, if you want to be saved, you will come out on the side of the oppressors, and you will take lessons from the politically correct. There are some things happening which are not making the news big time, which I think should make the news big time, but the CNN especially just likes to repeat itself. Here's something that is very bothersome, especially if you have a daughter. Netflix is promoting a series that basically sexualizes preteen girls. Netflix says they have a new story coming up. It's a story of 11-year-old Amy, who is eager to escape her family's simmering dysfunction. Amy, through through an ignited awareness of her burgeoning femininity, propels a group to enthusiastically embrace an increasingly sensual dance routine, sparking the girls' hope to twerk their way to stardom at a local dance contest. Now, this is from the Hollywood News. This is usually called, or was called, pedophilia. These 11-year-old girls. Might want to think about this if you have a young girl, 11 or less than 11. The idea that you would be allowed to have a show, the idea that you could advertise this, the idea that someone who was in advertising would write this thinking, boy, this will bring in a lot of people. This is a great idea. Makes you wonder who's running the show in America. This to me is astonishing. I realize I'm a little older, but it's just astonishing that this would be allowed. I don't know if it'll ever come to fruition, but it might. It might, and they might make fun of people saying you're sticking them out if you don't want to allow this on television. Or people say, well, freedom of speech, freedom of viewing. I'm for hitting these people with a 2x4. Here's a good definition of intellectual: someone engaged in the world of ideas who reads and writes for a living. There's a guy, a wonderful man who passed away recently, Paul Hollander, one of the greatest professors in American history, who wrote about intellectuals a great deal. And he has a list of people, intellectuals, and what they said at the time they said it. For example, there was a guy, Herbert Crowley, who was the founding editor of a magazine called The New Republic, which was the source material for old-fashioned liberal Democrats. So this guy was interviewed, and he said, he interviewed Mussolini, this editor of the New Republic. And he says of Mussolini and fascism, fascism is a political experiment which aroused in a whole nation and increased moral energy and dignified its activities by subordinating them to a deeply felt common purpose. Here's another person, Arnold Toynbee. He is one of the most important, certainly one of the most important historians in mankind's history. He actually interviewed Adolf Hitler, and he said he was convinced of his sincerity in desiring peace in Europe. Here's another fellow who is a Yale Divinity School theologian. He had a very prominent position to hold. And he said of Stalin, it would be an error to consider the Soviet leader a willful man who believes in forcing his ideas upon others. Here's a guy, John Fairbank. If you've ever studied anything about 20th century Europe, you know the name. He is considered the dean of China scholars. And he said, the Maoist revolution is on the whole the best thing that happened to the Chinese people in centuries. And he said, Mao's China is much more our friend than our enemy. It is peculiarly self-absorbed and non-aggressive abroad. Mao Zedong murdered in the tens of millions. The tens of millions, think of that. And this is what this yacht said. Here's another more current historian, University of Chicago. Notice how these are all top schools. Bruce Cummings. He depicts the North Korean dictator, he visited with him, this is Kim Il-sung, as a homebody who doesn't socialize much, doesn't drink much, and works at home in his pajamas. He most enjoys tinkering with his many music boxes. Sitting on the floor, he is prudish and shy like most Korean fathers. He is hopelessly devoted to his son. I mean, if Kim Il-sung is not a murderous bastard, I don't know who the hell is. Here are some figures that I think are kind of interesting. And at least sort of be part of the conversation. In New York City, whites commit fewer than 3% of all shootings, although they're 34% of the population. Blacks commit 75% of all shootings, even though they're 23% of the population. But you know, I was watching in the news today, and recently, 2 nights ago and last night, 2 black men who were walking away were killed, I would say murdered, by policemen. And in one of the cases, there were 2 white cops. One was holding the black man by his shirt. They were that close. And the other guy pumped 7 bullets into him. So I'm not sure what to do with that one. I would like to mention something of interest here regarding Christians that apparently no one cares about anymore. This is in Africa. There's kind of a general ongoing slaughter, piece by piece, going on of Christians by Muslims. This is in the case, this is April 2020. These are some of the cases that happened. Machete-wielding Muslim herdsmen murdered at least 13 Christians. April 7th, Fulani herdsmen, they're Muslim herdsmen, slaughtered a pastor and 3 members of his congregation, including a 10-year-old boy. This is all in 1 month. April 10th, at least they rested for 3 days. The Muslim Fulani herdsmen murdered Pastor Stephen Akpour. In Africa, there's a very vibrant Christian community there. They then, apparently, this didn't tire them out. On April 11th, Muslim Fulani herdsmen shot a Christian farmer dead. They took off 2 days, and on April 13th, they decapitated 2 Christians. I don't know what is it about these Muslim murderers, but they sure love decapitating people. April 14th, they butchered 9 Christians, 6 of whom were children, including 1 pregnant mother. They were in around shouting Allahu Akbar as they shot into our houses. April 16th, Muslim Fulani herdsmen killed Sebastian Stephen, a young Christian student. April 19th, they killed 4 Christians. April 20th, they shot and killed a Christian farmer. That's enough for me. Ooh, it's getting hard to end these little get-togethers on a happy note, but let's try. It turns out, these are jokes, it turns out that when asked who your favorite child is, you're supposed to pick one of your own. I know that now. Imagine if in London during the Blitz, there'd been a whole bunch of people going, I'll turn off my lights if I feel like it. I'm going to end with just a really nice story here. Wait a minute, I got a joke or 2 more. Here. You know you're old if they've discontinued your blood type. Well. I'd also like to put in a word about my doctor that I'm having some trouble with. And I told him I couldn't afford the operation, but he said he'll help. And what he did is he touched up the x-rays. I want to tell you a story about someone that you've heard of a lot, Babe Ruth. Everyone knows about his abilities on the baseball field. And everyone knows that he had certain problems, perhaps drank too much, perhaps ran around on his wives, perhaps smoked too much, perhaps ate too much, especially hot dogs. But there was another Babe Ruth out there, a Babe Ruth who went to bat. Now, this is a long time ago. This is during the 40s, the 1940s. He went to bat for women, for minorities, including the Jews of Europe. Uh, there was a war on, of course, during World War II, and Jews were being murdered by the millions. People would not pay attention. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did not pay any attention. He was told about this. There was actually a Polish hero who broke into Auschwitz so he could write and take pictures and come back with information. And this information was given to President Roosevelt. He didn't want to do anything. He said they couldn't do anything. Yes, they could. Actually, we accidentally dropped bombs on Auschwitz. It was so close to one of our intended targets. But basically, he didn't want to do anything. He said nothing could be done. This was an outrageous lie. But in order to get him to act, someone had to do something and embarrass the man. There was a woman named Dorothy Thompson who was quite famous at the time. She was considered to be the second most powerful woman in the country. The first most powerful woman in the country was Eleanor Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wife. Now, this woman, Dorothy Thompson, was expelled from Nazi Germany. Now, she was also of German origin, which led her to get other Germans, people of German origins, like Babe Ruth, to sign on to an anti-Nazi statement made in the newspaper. And this was a spectacular thing. It wasn't done very much at that time. We Americans of German descent raise our voice in denunciation of the Hitler policy of cold-blooded extermination of the Jews of Europe and against the barbarities committed by the Nazis against all other innocent people under their sway. These horrors are in particular a challenge to those like us who are descendants of the Germany that once stood in the foremost ranks of civilization. The best-known signature was George Herman Babe Ruth. God bless him.